Doesn't matter part two. Okay, so where we left off was hydrocarbons. Now, how I want you to think about hydrocarbon is the most abundant sources in our reality marrying. So you have hydrogen and you have carbon, which serves as the foundation for most elements, especially organic elements. Okay, so hydrocarbon makes up petroleum. Hydrocarbon makes up oil. When you take hydrogen and you mix it with oxygen, you get a liquid that we call water, and that makes up most of our body. When you take carbon and you mix it with oxygen, it becomes poisonous. And there was a previous lecture where I said that you need water, like you need hydrogen in order to create fire, right? So the element fire depends on water. So a fire striker is a piece of carbon steel. So what you're striking is the air, and the air is composed of water. So the carbon is pulling that element of hydrogen from the air and is mixing it with carbon and is producing fire. Now, go back to these bonds. Now, methane, when you see meth, it means one carbon bond. Eth, like ethanol, two carbon bonds. Pro, three carbon bonds, so forth and so on. So, like butane, four carbon bonds. So, when you spray butane and you put a lighter to it, then you make a torch, right? That's the when you increase the amount of carbons, then you increase the how flammable it is. So hydrogen and carbon, they make up all the elements on our earth, right? Like in water, you can find hydrogen. In fire, you can find carbon. In soil, the earth, you can find carbon. But you can experience both at different frequencies. Like here's the periodic table of elements, right? Side note, why does nobody ever mention the missing chunks on the periodic table of elements? Like there are a lot of elements that are missing. Anyway, these elements are just one energy at different frequencies. You know how when you go to see a symphony, if you never went to see a symphony, I implore it. I implore you to do it. So these all these instruments like brass, shout out to my brass people, trombone for life, and you have winds, you have all these different sections. They're tapping into the same energy, but because of the frequency, like the strings on a viola, however you want to say it, violin, because of the brass, because of the wind pipes on like a clarinet or a flute, you experience the the energy of music in different frequencies, but it's the same energetic source that these instruments are pulling from. So look at this key signatures chart. It's 12 different key signatures, but you can see you have major scales and minor scales. When you mix them together, you can create symphonies, but separately, they're single tones. Here's another example. Look at this. These are keys and scales of music. Each key, when the frequency of each key is used, it can produce a different shape, especially when shown on sand or water. When you start mixing these together, then the shapes start to look more like this. Remember, I said in the other video that these are more like songs. And then you have these shapes that respond to certain elements like isosahedron, water, dodecahedron, ether. Ether was used to harness power, especially with churches, old world churches using antiquitech. Okay, stay with me here. And so this is why when you walk by churches and you look at the windows always resemble these sacred shapes, responding to the ether, responding to the source energy, and certain keys, responding to certain elements. And when I say keys, I mean like the songs that's being played around you at all times, especially when you see the trees blowing in the wind. The time zone that you're in will determine the frequency that you experience. Now you have different tones that correspond with different body parts, different organs, and those different organs have different resonant harmonious frequencies. Now you remember I showed you this key signatures chart. Well, these keys are used to produce those tones that correspond to those body parts, the harmonious frequencies. And remember, it's 12 here. Now, in the natal chart, you have 12 houses, and each house corresponds to a different body part. Like Aries, the head, and then the head has a resonant frequency. So, Aries, the sign, corresponds to a certain tone. Pisces deals with the feet. Pisces corresponds with a different tone. 12 houses, 12 signs, 12 constellations, 12 luminary bodies in the firmament, 12 key signatures on the 12 key signatures chart. And when those key signatures that correspond to the certain body parts, when they're the reason why Aries deals with Mars, the reason why traditionally Pisces deals with Jupiter, but in modern day times it deals with Neptune, the reason why Scorpio deals with Mars or Pluto is because when you look at these constellations, they are corresponding with tones. Let me show you again. Cymatics. So vibration then can create electricity. And those vibrations, the force used from those vibrations, they can create rotation as showed in another video, like the sun and the moon. Those same vibrations can also create bonds, like molecular bonds. And this is why a three-dimensional structure like a tetrahedron, hydrogen carbon, can be created on a planar field using vibration, using sound. And is manifested with the boundary of the third density, which we call the speed of light. And this is why photons, the light particles, create our reality. But those photons are responding to vibration, which then create matter. But what we call matter is just vibrations. Is nothing is solid. It doesn't matter. So, for example, like you can use those vibrations to create any type of matter. Here's a patent to create clouds, fogs, mist. Here are different types of patents to create atmospheric conditions, which is why a snowflake looks like a symphony, because it's the vibration. It's a memory that the water has, and this is how we see it. Side note, this is why when you are involved in coitus, when at the moment that a man, releases his frequency into the woman, he feels it in his crown chakra first because he has to, because of the speed of the energy that's being received. And the reason why location is so important is the same reason why when I read your natal chart or another astrologer reads your natal chart, they need your exact location and your exact time, because location responds to a certain latitude and longitudes, and those digits, the latitude and longitudes, those numbers are responding to frequencies. This is why sound, longitudinal waves correspond with location, longitude. It's all vibrations creating what we perceive as physical matter, composed of elements that are just the same source energy at different frequencies. So technically, water is not a liquid, it's a gas. They say that there are no straight lines found in nature, right? But when you look at this crystallized water, its memory is frozen and you can see angles on it. Now, Stanford report says Stanford engineers develop a computer that operates on water droplets. So really, water has more of an electric component to it, which is why our weather can be programmed. And nature has binary code found in the very fabric of it. So if reality is programmable, that's proof of a simulation. And if God or source energy said, let there be light, then that's vibration creating light.